The whole thing was the composition of a servant girl. The composition was about on a par with the writing. The undersigned would be obliged if Miss Coleman would let her empty house. I do not know the rent, but send £50. If more, will send. Please address, Mohammed El Kheir, Post Office, Sligo Street, London. It struck me as being as singular an application for a tenancy as I remembered to have encountered. When I passed it on to Lessingham, he seemed to think so too. This is a curious letter, Miss Coleman. So I thought, and still more so when I found the £50 inside. There were 5 £10 notes, all loose, and the letter not even registered. If I had been asked what was the rent of the house, I should have said, at the most, not more than £20, because between you and me it wants a good bit of doing up, and is hardly fit to live in as it stands. I had had sufficient evidence of the truth of this altogether, apart from the landlady's frank admission. Why, for all he could have done to help himself, I might have kept the money, and only sent him a receipt for a quarter. And some folks would have done, but I'm not one of that sort myself, and shouldn't care to be. So I sent this here party, I never could pronounce his name, and never shall, a receipt for a year.' Miss Coleman paused to smooth her apron and consider. 'Well, the receipt should have reached this here party on the Thursday morning, as it were. I posted it on the Wednesday night, and on the Thursday after breakfast I thought I'd go over the way to see if there were any little thing I could do, because there wasn't hardly a whole pane of glass in the place, when I all but went all of a heap. When I looked across the road, blessed if the party wasn't in already, at least as much as he ever was in, which, so far as I can make out, never as being anything particular, though how he got in, unless it was through a window in the middle of the night, is more than I should care to say. There was nobody in the house when I went to bed, that I could pretty nearly take my Bible oath. Yet there was the blind up at the parlour, and what's more, it was down, and it's been down pretty nearly ever since. Well, I says to myself, for right down imperence this beats anything. Why, he's in the place before he knows if I'll let him have it. Perhaps he thinks I haven't got a word to say in the matter, £50 or no £50. I'll soon show him. So I slips on my bonnet, and I walks over the road, and I hammers at the door. Well, I've seen people hammering since then, many a one, and how they've kept it up has puzzled me, for an hour some of them, but I was the first one as begun it. I hammers and I kept on hammering, but it wasn't no more use than if I'd been hammering at a tombstone. So I starts rapping at the window, but that wasn't no use neither. So I goes round behind, and I hammers at the back door, but there I couldn't make anyone hear nohow. So I says to myself, perhaps the party as is in ain't in a manner of speaking, but I'll keep an eye on the house, and when he is in I'll take care that he ain't out again before I've had a word to say. So I come back home, and as I said I would, I kept an eye on the house the whole of that livelong day, but never a soul went either out or in. But the next day, which it was a Friday, I got out of bed about 5 o'clock, to see if it was raining, through my having an idea of taking a little excursion if the weather was fine, when I see a party coming down the road. He had on one of them dirty coloured bed cover sort of things, and it was wrapped all over his head and round his body like, as I've been told them there Arabs wear, and indeed I've seen them in them myself at West Brompton, when they was in that exhibition there. It was quite fine and broad day, and I see him as plainly as I see you. He comes skimming along at a tear of a pace, pulls up at the house over the way, opens the front door and lets himself in. So I says to myself, there you are. Well, Mr. Arab, or whatever, or whoever you may be, I'll take good care that you don't go out again before you've had a word from me. I'll show you that landladies have their rights, like other Christians in this country, however it may be in yours. So I kept an eye on the house to see that he didn't go out again, and nobody never didn't, and between 7 and 8 I goes and I knocks at the door, because I thought to myself that the earlier I was the better it might be. If you'll believe me, no more notice was taken of me than if I was one of the dead. I hammers and I hammers till my wrist was aching. I dare say I hammered 20 times, and then I went round to the back door and I hammers at that, but it wasn't the least good in the world. I was that provoked to think I should be treated as if I was nothing and nobody by a dirty foreigner who went about in a bedgown through the public streets, that it was all I could do to hold myself. I comes round to the front again, and I starts hammering at the window, with every knuckle on my hands, and I calls out, "I'm Miss Louisa Coleman, and I'm the owner of this house, and you can't deceive me. I saw you come in, and you're in now, and if you don't come and speak to me at this moment, I'll have the police." All of a sudden, when I was least expecting it, and was hammering my very hardest at the pane, up goes the blind, and up goes the window too, and the most awful looking creature ever I heard of, not to mention seeing, puts his head right into my face. It was more like a hideous baboon than anything else, let alone a man. I was struck all of a heap and plumps down on the little wall, and all but tumbles head over heels backwards, and he starts shrieking, in a sort of kind of English, and in such a voice as I'd never heard the like. It was like a rusty steam engine. "Go away, go away, I don't want you. I will not have you, never. You have your £50, you have your money. That is the whole of you. That is all you want. You come to me no more, never, never no more, or you be sorry. Go away." I did go away, and that as fast as ever my legs would carry me. What with his looks, and what with his voice, and what with the way that he went on, I was nothing but a mass of trembling. As for answering him back, or giving him a piece of my mind as I had meant to, I wouldn't have done it not for £1,000. I don't mind confessing, between you and me, that I had to swallow 4 cups of tea right straight away before my nerves was steady. "Well," I says to myself, when I did feel as it might be a little more easy, "you never have let that house before, and now you've let it with a vengeance, so you have. If that there new tenant of yours isn't the greatest villain that ever went unhung, it must be because he's got near relations what's as bad as himself, because 2 families like his I'm sure there can't be. A nice sort of Arab party to have sleeping over the road, he is. But after a time I cools down, as it were, because I'm one of them sort as likes to see on both sides of a question. After all, I says to myself, he has paid his rent, and £50 is £50. I doubt if the whole house is worth much more, and he can't do much damage to it whatever he does. I shouldn't have minded, so far as that went, if he'd set fire to the place, for, between ourselves, it's insured for a good bit over its value. So I decided that I'd let things be as they were, and see how they went on. But from that hour to this I've never spoken to the man, and never wanted to, and wouldn't, not of my own free will, not for a shilling a time. That face of his will haunt me if I live till Noah, as the saying is. I've seen him going in and out at all hours of the day and night. That Arab party's a mystery if ever there was one. He always goes tearing along as if he's flying for his life. Lots of people have come to the house, all sorts of kinds, men and women. They've been mostly women, and even little children. I've seen them hammer and hammer at the front door, but never a one have I seen let in, or yet seen taken any notice of, and I think I may say, and yet tell no lie, that I've scarcely took my eye off the house since he's been inside it. Over and over again in the middle of the night have I got up to have a look, so that I've not missed much that has took place. What's puzzled me is the noises that's come from the house. Sometimes for days together there's been not a sound. It might have been a house of the dead. And then, all through the night, there have been yells and screeches, squawks and screams. Never heard nothing like it. I've thought, and more than once, that the devil himself must be in that front room, let alone all the rest of his demons. And as for cats, where they've come from I can't think. I didn't used to notice hardly a cat in the neighbourhood till that there Arab party came, and there isn't much to attract them, but since he came here there's been regiments. Sometimes at night there's been troops about the place, screeching like mad. I've wished them farther, I can tell you. That Arab party must be fond of 'em. I've seen them inside the house at the windows, upstairs and downstairs, as it seems to me a dozen at a time. End of chapter 39.